of scary. Well, and the fact that it was two women is different. That's according to what my girlfriend said. I've got a girlfriend that lives right down on, right down on the gate, so. Oh, wait a minute, I read it wrong. I didn't have glasses on. Two white men. I thought it said women, because I saw the W down, and now that I've got glasses on, it's two white men in their 40s. It is.
Okay, it is 9 o'clock. I would call the meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, I have a favor to ask of you this morning. We had an incident last month where people in the back were having difficulty hearing. If you feel it necessary to carry on a conversation with your neighbor, please take it out in the lobby. Thank you. I note the presence of a quorum. Approval of regular agenda. I would question the board. Would we like to add under new business, just to document your casual discussions with Harley?
No.
No? No. Okay. At that point, are there any additions, deletions, corrections to the agenda?
I have none.
Shauna? I would then entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I so move.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, agenda is approved. Consent agenda, approval of our prior minutes, invoices paid, review of treasurer's report. And I would like to make one comment in here as we proceed along. We should be making line item adjustments in our budget as we proceed along. As soon as we identify a line item which is going over, which we have several, we should be taking notice to those and making adjustments out of other line items to then balance that out rather than allow it to string along to the end of the year. So that being said, I realize this is pretty short notice to have a peek at that and consider where we want to shuffle to, but that is something we should be doing.
Quick question, is that part of our articles of incorporation, or is it like a formal process?
That is a generally accepted accounting practice and also law by state of Michigan, that when we notice line items going over in a budget, that it should be corrected.
Yes.
I thought that for a municipality, that's law, but for a corporation, that's not. I mean, and I'm not just trying to
That is
play games
possible
with it, because I think what you're saying is the way to manage budget.
Mm-hmm.
So,
So it's I would say you're expressing that as a preferred practice or a statutory mandate?
Well, I guess at this point, not knowing the difference between corporation and municipal, I know it to be a fact for a municipality. Whether or not it is a fact for us or not, but I think it would be wise for us and as a board to be able to more accurately track our budget if if we said, well, we're way over here, and kind of balance things out as we go, rather than try and wait at the end of the year.
I was hoping to meet with our person who actually sets this document up.
Mm-hmm.
Because currently, as it's constructed, I have no idea where we are on virtually anything. I can't tell. And it's obviously deep into this year to correct this in a gigantic way, but at least perhaps we can set it up so we can see it proportionally. We are off. And plus, the tough part about like this, the way it's currently set up is you can get a feel, but some line items are the same every month.
Right.
Some line items come up once in a year. So if you split them into 12s, if you don't split them at all, you don't know what's going on for a good chunk of the year until they occur. If they're split into 12s and they occur in the first, and they occur in January, it makes you look like you're way out of budget. If they don't occur until December, you can feel like you're way under budget and spend money that you
Correct.
really shouldn't. So somehow, when we go and undertake the 2017 budget, that we do it for the 12 months, that we lay out whatever kind of recurring things happen in the appropriate month, and begin the conversation about where we are in a given month.
Mm-hmm.
With not perfection. I don't think anybody in the budget is going for perfection. But if we're talking about making adjustments and adding positions, deleting positions, making purchases, not making purchases, the standard isn't perfect, but the standard's to try to be more precise.
Well, and understand a budget is nothing more than your best guess. Here's what we think we have coming in, and here's what we think we're going to spend. And here's where we think we need it.
And I'm looking forward to making better guesses.
Shauna?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I agree with Peter on this, and because I am not a budget person other than running a household budget or, a neighborhood homeowners association budget, this is so beyond me. And Peter, I would hope that maybe if you're gonna meet with them, that I could tag along.
Right after this meeting, going.
Okay, perfect. I
Very
would
good.
love to do that.
Very
Okay.
good. Be interested to see what you come back with. So, at that point, is there any further discussion on the consent agenda?
I'll move that we approve this consent agenda.
Do we have a second? Second by Shauna. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, consent agenda is approved. Public comment. Do we have any public comment this morning?
Morning. Ian Ballard, Chelsea Firefighters, local president. I had a couple issues to discuss this morning. Back on July 24th, I'd emailed the board and the chief regarding our staffing levels and our budget, and requesting that the directive that shut down all overtime and PTO be rescinded so that we could continue to staff the trucks with 3 firefighters minimum 24/7. Currently, 2 of our shifts are only staffing with 2 firefighters, which is 1 firefighter in Lima and 1 firefighter downtown. I received some feedback from the board, from the board chair Osborne, but no definitive answer as to the board having a discussion about looking into the budget. I know there's been a lot of discussion about our financial reports that are produced. That's been a discussion that Mr. Kosak can say is a good 4 years now, with the same financial reports and the same problems of not being able to tell where our money actually is. At this point, we continue to use those financial reports. We've been using them for 4 years, and looking at the one that was just produced, it does appear that we do have sufficient funds. We're at 51% of our budget for the year, and the year is almost 70% over. So again, we're asking that directive be rescinded and we be allowed to staff the additional firefighter on those 2 shifts so the citizens can have the service that they're currently paying for. Additionally, we signed the letter of understanding to get the other firefighter hired back on July 22nd. As of today, there's been no schedule for any interview process to keep that ball rolling. I know that was a concern of this board, that we provide those life and death services and we get those guys hired, and they asked the union for a letter of understanding to shorten that period. We did so, and here we are August 16th, and we still don't even have an interview process set up and those guys notified. So just want to make sure that we all hold up our end of the bargain and do what we can to get that done. And so I was hoping that the board could help maybe push that along so we could get that individual hired.
Can we ask questions during this part of the process?
Typically, we do not, but I would.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to. Ian, it is stated in the chief's report that those interviews were conducted on August 9th.
They took the test.
3 individuals listed who took that examination. Unfortunately, Chief had to be at another meeting at 9 o'clock this morning, and I was anticipating perhaps a recommendation of one of these individuals to actually be hired. So we as a board are poised and ready to take that action to hire a firefighter.
It's a 3-part process. There's a written test, there's an oral board interview, and a chief's interview. The only portion of the process that's currently done is the written test. There's been no oral board and no chief's interview.
Okay.
So there's still 2 parts of that process left to complete, and we understand the time frame in providing the service and needing to get that done, and we just want to make sure that's getting done in a timely manner.
I will get with Chief later on this afternoon and see where that stands and where we are scheduled to be.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment. Any further?
Good morning, Tom Dembski, a Linden Township resident. I'd like to speak in support of the firefighters union in addressing the budget. I appreciate the discussion this morning that you're going to meet and talk about it. About time. Thank you. I'd really appreciate you reporting back on something there. The other very important issue that still remains unaddressed is the staffing, specifically what the union asked for a month ago and basically got no response. That letter restricting the staffing to 2 minimum, not 3. It looks like we probably have the money. Why aren't we addressing this? So let me ask the board, why aren't we addressing the staffing, the day-to-day staffing? 2 out of 3 shifts still just have 2 firefighters. Where I live in Linden Township, if I call 911 for a fire, I get 1 truck with 1 person, 2 out of 3 days, from Jackson Road, 1 truck from Middle Street, and 20 minutes later they might show up. 2 of them with 2 trucks. It's not even enough to safely fight a fire. You guys just are ignoring this. What is going on? Mr. Feeney, I have emailed you. I've asked to meet with you. I've asked to, I've emailed you issues to discuss on email. I've asked to meet with you on email. I get no response. I've talked to my township representative. I know she's tried to contact the other board members to discuss these issues so the board could discuss and then act on it. You don't even communicate with each other. I'm appalled.
Tom, I apologize. I don't recall seeing any email from you about any of the discussion issues. And we meet regularly anyway. So I would welcome any.
Can we meet?
Anytime.
Can we discuss?
Absolutely.
Well, it's interesting that you don't respond to Shauna and you don't respond to me.
That is not true. It's not true.
If I could just go ahead and add fuel to the fire here. CAFA has been over $100,000 in the red for the last 4 years. Our reserves, when I came on this board, were $800,000–900,000, and they've dwindled down to about $500,000. So I don't know where you think the money's gonna come from to fund additional firefighters. So, you know, if you look at the budgets, I don't wanna lay blame and say, well, it's because of this, this, or this, or this. But the facts is that this fire department has run over budget for at least 4 years in a row. And if you go to the state of Michigan Department of Treasury, all the audit files are there. It's all public information. PHP is our auditor. You could confirm all of that. Go look. It's all public information. You could see that we've been running this thing in the ground for the last 4 years.
You
So-
just discussed, and excuse me, Kurt, but you just discussed that you don't know where the budget's at right now.
Well, I would.
That having been said, Tom, in fairness, because that's a true statement. In prior years, we have run a deficit. Currently, I'm not confident about where we stand. So like, given the current budget presentation, almost any argument can be made, including the one you're making, the one that Ian made earlier, that we should add a firefighter. I would love to do that. I don't feel confident that we understand the numbers and what remains for the rest of the year. We're gonna meet, Sean and I will meet with the person who produces our budget report after this meeting in order to get a much more precise view and state with confidence a better opinion on that.
I appreciate that.
So this budget is fairly accurate. I mean, 70 to 80% of CAFA's costs are things that are for a year, that they're there. You know, the wages, the insurance, all that, it's all unknown. It's not like there are a lot of variables in there. So, you know, I'm comfortable with what our income is based on the tax revenue that we receive. And I'm pretty confident that we have a good handle on 70 to 80% of our expenses. This budget looks good today, you know, at 51%, but there's $100,000, $143,000 of truck lease payment that doesn't show in here. So that's a timing issue of when does that lease payment get made? If it got made today, you would show that we were over $100,000 in the hole again. So, I mean, that's really the problem that CAFA has, is our expenses exceed our revenue.
So as the board, what's the plan to address that? Because we don't have enough firefighters on the street, in the stations, 2 out of 3 days a week.
Step one is get better budget.
Well, I'm glad to hear that's finally happening. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further public comment?
Susie Catherine, Chelsea, Michigan. So it's my understanding then, sitting in the back row, that my taxes have been paying for fire services, but what I'm understanding by what was just said is that if my house burns down, there's possibly no one that's going to be able, there's not enough people that are going to be able to respond. Whose fault is that? You're sitting here saying we've been running in the red for all this time. Whose fault is it? It's not ours, because we assumed that our taxes were going for these services. It's your responsibility to get this stuff under control, and you're not doing it. You're sitting here talking about how the budget is a mess, and it's kind of right, but it's not, and well, this is right and this isn't. For God's sakes, hire an accountant then. Figure it out, because we've lived in the city counting on you people to make sure we're safe. You're not safe, and you're not safe. And I don't know how you can live with it, because it disgusts me. Talk to the mayor then, ask for help. But you're not figuring it out yourself.
Thank you. Any further public comment?
Mark Keitzer, Linden Township resident, also supervisor of Linden Township. I just wanted to address the CAFA board and let them know that we did have a special meeting / workshop last week to discuss some priorities that we thought as a board and what we've heard from our community. And we just came up with 3, I think somewhat, we all know these, but just our priorities we'd like to make known is the formal leadership must be established, interim CAFA, with the interim CAFA chief, and with possible assistance from Dexter Area Fire Authority to help do that. Number 2 was the chairman's authority defined and legitimized by the CAFA board. We understand there's some transition right now that needs to happen, and maybe you've already given the chairman some of this authority, but just make it known to the public the authority you have given him, if you have, or if you need to give him authority, to please make it known. It just opens the communication lines, helps everybody understand things a little better. And then last, we'd like to ask that you formally explore a regional fire agency with the surrounding communities. And final, I mean, that's the 3 priorities. And then at the bottom here, we realize that there's other concerns the CAFA board is challenged with in parallel with the above priorities, and appreciate the board's past and ongoing efforts to resolve them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And if I could comment to you on that, the mutual aid that we have within the surrounding communities is extraordinary, and I don't think anyone will argue that. We have a very good working relationship with Dexter, also with all of the other surrounding communities. So the fears that are outlined of gee, nobody's going to show up, we only have 2 firefighters, that is absolutely not true. The fact remains that when a call goes out, depending on what equipment is necessary for that call, surrounding communities do come and lend their support and ensure that everything is taken care of. So, thank you. Any further public comment? Yes, sir.
Roger Sharon from Linden Township. Couple of things. You say you have good mutual support. I think by the time they show up, they'll probably save the basement, from that standpoint. I just have a simple thing. It looks like you have a lot of other problems. I've been trying to donate my house for 9 months to the city, or to the CAPA, to get it burned down for training. And it seems like it can't get done by the chief. Keeps telling me it's going to get done. Find out that he didn't submit the paperwork until 2 weeks ago. I'm not even sure it got submitted. You're looking at the chief being gone in 2 weeks, but yet on your agenda, I don't hear anything about what you're going to do about your new chief if this guy disappears or goes on his vacation September 1st. And he tells me that it's going to be up to the new chief, but he doesn't know what the new chief's going to be, when, how, whatever. I would like to know if you guys want my house for training purposes, and if you don't, if you'll give me permission to give it to Dexter, who seems to be a little more organized. So.
Excuse me, Roger, just for the minutes, I didn't catch your last name.
Roger Sharon, Linden Township.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further? Hearing none. Moving on to the chief's report. And everyone has a copy of that. So I would just go by the written that we have in here. Without the chief here to make any comments on it. Is there any questions on anything that was presented in the chief's report? Hearing none, we'll move on to unfinished business. First is a website update status. I must say, Lima Township is just about as stymied as what we are here at CAFA. I know I had undertaken obtaining some bids and whatnot for our website. We are still anxiously awaiting several bids. One from a highly recommended individual that Lisa Almendinger is working on getting her in touch with. I've spoken with her once, but I still do not have any prices from her on that. So hopefully by next month we can have a presentation on bids for our website and whatnot there. So, any questions on that? Peter, interim chief replacement and chief replacement. What do you have for us?
The committee has met multiple times, came up with the policy as I explained last meeting about deciding at least to attempt to get an interim chief and have that separated from the full-time chief position. It's been posted in 6 places, and we're meeting again on Friday night to review any applications that have come in. Not at the last report as of yesterday, none had come in. But one of the other things we're expecting is that hopefully to get some referrals either from people connected to the chairman or to the consultant that we met with.
If I could make one comment, I did read your guidelines, if you will, for the interim chief, and I would ask the committee to perhaps take another look at the fact that the interim chief would not be allowed to proceed for full-time chief, and here's the reason for my argument on that, if you will, and take it for what it is. I feel with this position, we are not going to have an overwhelming amount of applicants. There is the chance, and hear me out both ways here, a chance that our interim chief, we might have a look at and say, boy, the guy's doing an outstanding job, and that's really who we'd like to have as chief. But we shot ourselves in the foot by saying, no, he can't be, he's not eligible. And you can look at the other side of the coin there too, if you would, that you could say, well, he's been here 3-4 months, and boy, are we glad we didn't hire that guy. So you have those options. I think we're painting ourselves into a corner by not having that option available. And I understand your consultant feels having that individual be eligible cut some corners and perhaps disinterest some people. I could understand that with a large CEO position or something, ever so much larger than what we see here. But I don't feel we're gonna get that amount of volume to where that decision would really impact us.
Totally legitimate point of view, something we discussed at length. It was probably, I can speak for myself, I can't speak for the rest of the committee. It was kind of a 55-45 kind of level of decision, because we're inexperienced. The last time a chief was hired here was 10 years ago, so none of us have, I think, been involved in hiring a chief. But I think the committee, I think it's a pretty, I like the thinking that I've seen in the committee. And I mean, at the end of the day, we had to make a decision. That was kind of a fork in the road. We picked one side of it. I don't think we're, hey, if we end up with no eligible candidates, then we will have to change our position.
Okay. That was my only comment.
Totally legit.
Thank you, Peter. Do you have anything further on that?
No, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Just as an option, and I know you probably considered it, we could, if we have absolutely no interim, we could ask, I don't know if Tom Osborne would be willing to do it, have him step down from the board, pay him to do the interim, and then continue on with the process.
That would be one option, for sure.
We do have an applicant, by the way.
Oh,
that,
good.
We had, when Tom and I were charged with initially coming up with an interim, we had 2 applicants. And I spoke last meeting on this. Both were fully qualified as far as the education was concerned. One individual we did not feel had sufficient field experience. So we were prepared last month to
So are these candidates that if you told them as interim you're not eligible for full-time, would that take them out of the picture? Would they say, I'm not interested in the interim?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. Because at that point, this had not been brought up. So that would have to be a conversation with them to see where we were at with that.
Great.
But Tom has both of those resumes.
Okay.
So, and I believe you folks do too, or at least the one that was handed out last
I'll
month.
find out on Friday.
So, very good. Okay, anything further on that? Moving on to C, legal issues pending. I do not have an update on that. I don't know if any of the other board members do, other than to say that, yes, we still have legal issues pending. Is anyone else further up to speed on that than what I am? No? Okay, we'll move on from that. FOIA policy and coordinator. Lo and behold, and it slipped my mind, Kim dug this out of the dredges of what we had done back in 2015. We do have a current and approved FOIA policy, and the chief, I believe, was named as the coordinator. You will find a copy of that in your packets, our complete FOIA policy and everything that we have there, so no need to reinvent the wheel on that.
Well, I do, Craig, sorry.
Sure.
I do think though with the chief leaving at the end of the month that we need to appoint a new FOIA coordinator. And it would make sense to me to have that be actually part of the administrative assistant's position. Because typically that would be somebody that would, obviously they would want to consult with the chief, being the interim or eventually the permanent chief, and maybe eventually it would rightfully go back there. But for the meantime, the administrative assistant would be the one that would be making the copies of the paperwork, and they'd probably be the one that would be initially seeing it. So, I mean, with Jim Payer leaving for retirement, I do think we need to appoint somebody as a new coordinator. And my recommendation for the time being would be to just make that part of the administrative assistant's position. I kind of did have a little conversation with Kim about this the other day, and correct me, Kim, if I'm wrong, but you seem to be in agreement with undertaking that. When we talked about it, I know it's more work, but
Well, it ends up eventually on my desk anyway.
right,
And
and we did talk about
I
that. And I do want to thank Kim for searching that out, because actually I had been meeting with, I had met with Mark and Linda about a FOIA policy, which they shared Linden Townships with me, and I had checked out the others. And somebody contacted me about the minutes last year, and so I had emailed Tom and then got a hold of Kim. So I do want to thank Kim for going to the attorneys and double checking on all that and bringing that out, because you're right, we don't need to spend money to reinvent the wheel. But I do think today that we probably should appoint a new FOIA coordinator, and my take on it would make most sense to just appoint the administrative assistant currently.
Before we throw Kim under the bus, are you willing to take that on, Kim? Yes? Shauna, would you, sorry for the discussion.
It does say in the FOIA policy that the FOIA coordinator may designate another individual to act on his or her behalf in accepting and processing requests for CAFA's public records. So, if the FOIA coordinator is the chief, and chief could designate.
Sure.
Well, then we just need to make sure that that's done before he leaves, and then how do we make that official so that it can be disseminated to the public, or do we just take care of it today while we're here?
In a motion form.
We could certainly, if
Just
you'd like,
clean it up
Shauna,
and-
just go ahead and turn that into a motion if you would.
Yeah,
And that way we've got it documented that was what we've done, and it's officially turned over to Kim.
Yeah, so I make a motion that we appoint the administrative assistant, currently at this time Kim Payer, as the FOIA coordinator. And I don't know, is that all we need at this point? I mean, we could always revisit it down the road.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. Thank you. Meeting place and times. Shauna, have you?
I did.
Any
I
progress on that?
gathered everybody's schedule, and then I called, actually I started first with Laura Kaiser, I believe it is, through the city, and talked with her about when this room might be available, since we already meet here. And the fourth Tuesday of every month seems to be available as far out as they could see on their scheduling. So we could meet here the fourth Tuesday of every month, 7 o'clock in the evening if we want. We could choose a time, but that's available if that's something that looks good for everybody.
I apologize, I was trying to write the last motion down.
Okay, sorry.
Which date and time?
The fourth Tuesday. So it would be, if
In
it
the
would be
evening?
this month, in the evening, yeah. It's available, this room. So, you know, was there
As
anything?
as the board considers this, I would only reference Sylvan Township, who had many wishes to have evening hours, evening office hours, which they finally did comply with. Very short-lived, if I remember right, Rob. All the people that squawked that wanted to come in the evening time never showed up. So they went and reverted back to just their daytime hours. So I would like to see us give some more thought on this before we move on. And to be honest with you, I would like Tom's opinion on this also before we up and make a decision.
I have discussed this with Tom, and the email that I got back was that he was fine with whatever the decision was. It would work with him. My feeling on it is, since the public is asking for it at this point, that we give it a try in the other direction, that we do try evening hours and see. I do know there are a couple people on the board that, that work daytimes. So, you know, maybe just in deference to those two people, we could try that. I mean, Tom, you and I are retired.
Yeah.
So I guess that maybe we should hear from, you know, the two members who have day jobs, you know, what their thoughts are. And the public is asking that, so try it for a while that direction, would be my take on it.
Well, DDA meets, if you're gonna meet in the morning, you gotta meet earlier. DDA meets at 7:30 in the morning. That,
No, evening time.
fine, meet early.
No,
But they meet in the morning.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it makes it possible to get to work at a decent hour. Right now, I basically, my morning's gone. So, I'm gonna go over to the fire station, meet with Kim and Shauna and maybe Tom and go through budget stuff. That's gonna be, you know, 10:45. So, evenings would be way better. And, you know, I mean, the city council meets in the evening, almost everybody meets in the evening. I'm with you, Sean, I think, if it turns into a clunker on the fourth Tuesday of the month at 7 that evening, we can always change it back, change it to something else.
What are your thoughts, Kurt?
Whatever's gonna improve CAFA, I'm in favor of. You know, you could try it for a month, you could try it for 2 months, and then see if you need to change it back, because it didn't work.
Well, we're August, so what if we tried it for the remaining 4 months of the year? Typically, the scheduling is set in January, and by then we would have a pretty good idea of whether it was gonna work or not, at least for the short term, and see from there.
Well, I'll make a motion that we, for the remaining meetings of 2016, we meet on the fourth Tuesday of the month at 7 p.m. in this room.
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
Did you still want to talk to Tom personally about that, or?
I have not spoken with him on that. I'm sure Shauna did, if he's good with it. I don't have a problem, as I, being a retiree also, it makes no difference whether you take up my morning or take up my evening. So, we can certainly do that. I guess my question to the board would be, as our packets are all already advertising September's meeting being a morning meeting here, would we want to initiate that in October? Just to eliminate confusion? So that that would give us enough time to publish it, and let it be well known.
Then I'll withdraw my motion.
Well, just amend it if you would,
I'll amend my motion to
beginning in October.
beginning October.
Okay, I'll second that.
All right. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. So September will remain 9 a.m. here. October will be the fourth Tuesday, 7
Here.
p.m. here.
7 p.m.
All right. New business, we have none. Reports, we have no chairman, so no chairman report. I would like to report that we had a meeting yesterday with Rover Pipeline folks. All of the affected township supervisors were in attendance at Lima Township Hall. Rover does intend, as they get closer to putting that line in service, providing training for all the local fire departments as to different response techniques and issues and whatnot there. So that will be coming up. It is possible, there's no schedule in sight yet, but it is possible that construction of the pipeline could start as early as November, depending on the remaining federal guidelines that have to take place. So that was all I had. Secretary, do we have any reports? Peter?
No, sir.
No? Okay. Treasurer, Kurt?
Just to point out that the lease payments for the truck fund, I'm not sure what the timing of that is. I don't know if the chief were here, he could probably tell us when we would expect to see that. And the PHP audit results for 2015, I would have thought we would have seen them by now, or do we?
But
So
typically they come in and give a report.
Kim, do you know what's happening with the?
Peter was present, Tom and Peter and the chief, and Pat went over the preliminaries on the audit in the chief's office. And Pat also said he would come to a meeting. All we need to do is let him know, but it's filed with the state, it's available
Okay.
on the state website, so.
It is filed, but the meeting that we had with the auditor was fairly informal. It was, I came by when he was gonna be in the office anyway, so I have met the auditor. That's about as much as I can say about the audit.
Okay.
So
Right,
Kim,
which is what he typically does, it's just drops off, brings his stuff back, and
Yeah.
so we just need to set that up, and I've talked to Tom a couple times about, letting me know when he's ready for that, so.
If you could, would you check with Pat and see when we could get him scheduled, be it either September or October, but it would be nice to
Okay,
have an audit presentation. for the board and for the public. So, thank you.
Yep.
And then on our calendar, maybe we don't do it until October, but we should start talking about having a preliminary budget in front of the board's hands. It seems like we had that
We
on the
always
schedule for.
present it in October, but every year it's presented in October. But
So-
if you wanna get an earlier start, we can.
Well, I don't know, if without a chief,
He's already put out to all of us on the inside, cause I got one too, from, our request for like what we oversee, so like office equipment, I got, the memo and so we have until September 1st as staff members to turn those in to him, so.
right, so I just wanna make sure on the calendar, we have the dates, we have a preliminary budget, then we have work sessions, the public's invited to those work sessions, and then the final budget is presented to the municipalities, and those get voted and approved, or disapproved, and, I wanna make sure we continue to follow that process, that we don't fall behind in that.
Do you want to set dates for work sessions then, where do I put those on the calendar?
Well, just for next month, if we have it on the calendar to set dates for a work
Okay.
session, that might
Gotcha.
be helpful. And that's all I have on the treasurer's report.
Okay, thank you. Shauna, anything from trustees?
Just want to reiterate a little bit of what Mark mentioned in public comment, about discussion about formalizing some of the roles and responsibilities, and I had a little conversation just prior to the meeting with Kurt about procedures and different things like that, and it seems to me that that would be something important to really get in place as we're looking for a chief and hiring a permanent chief, so that all of that information can be shared, because to be honest, a lot of this seems to be in disarray to me. I mean, going back to the budget and who does what, and what the board chairman's responsibilities are, and they seem to be a little bit of a conflict between the bylaws and the articles of incorporation. So, I'm glad to hear that we're gonna be doing some work sessions. Are the work sessions typically just for the budget then, or would we wanna set a work session where we talk about some of these other issues that are there about who does what and who's responsible for what? And I know you and I had, Kurt, at one point had talked about how do we manage the budget and hold people accountable and things down the road. So some of those things I think need to be worked out and put in place so that we can give guidelines to a new chief when they come in. So, what's everybody's thought on that? And would that be something that we would want to consider?
Typically organizational things like that, we could handle in a budgetary work session
Okay.
and work that out. Typically, the way it's gone in the past is the chief and staff will come up with a preliminary budget for our purview, and we will have a look at it and say, do we think it's realistic or not? And then adjust accordingly, and then present it to the individual municipalities for their purview, and then bring it back and approve it.
Right.
So we have the opportunity in there to have a look at it ourselves, assign any responsibilities if we feel that's necessary. But otherwise, tailor that to what we feel the department's needs are, with a lot of input from the department. If that answered your question.
I think we have a great opportunity here with this, the prospect of new chief coming on and going through a budget process. It's gonna be really awkward, but it's a great opportunity to document the process. I mean, at least in my business life, you have to think about what happens when key people leave or what happens when you leave. Everybody's replaceable. And so if you don't show up tomorrow, you want it to be super easy for whoever succeeds you. So they just pick up a document. It might be hard to find the document. Somebody will know where it is. They find it. Okay, budget process. This is what we do. And I think there is some, especially with the chief's position being under some duress, relationship with the firefighters being tenuous. Sometimes the relationship with the board, I guess, has been tenuous in the past. Have the new incoming chief's going to want to know exactly what their role and responsibilities are, and I think we should do the same thing for the chair and the board. That we have some standards for ourselves. That we, so that people. Right now, it's easy for people to criticize us, probably because the organization isn't doing well, but there's not really a fixed standard. And if there was a fixed standard for us, or at least a better standard, it'd be easier for us to perform. It'd be easier for us to be judged.
Certainly could do that.
Kurt has an awesome document there that he was showing me that he's put together, and I think that would be so helpful to, maybe share with everybody if you don't mind, Kurt. I think it would just be very, very helpful, and that might be something we could springboard from.
Yeah, because we do have overriding documents in place, so.
Okay.
Begin to begin.
Yeah. Very good. Anything further, Sean?
No, just I'm hoping that once Tom returns, that maybe we can talk about getting a work session such as that in place, so that we can maybe get some of these things taken care of before the budget comes up and we need to deal with that, because a lot of the focus right now is going to be on hiring a new chief, and so if we can get some of this out of the way before that process starts, I think it'll mean a little more work for us initially, but maybe it won't all pile up all at once that way.
Good point.
So how about we talk with Tom when he gets back and get something set?
See if we can schedule.
Okay.
All right, very good. Thank you. Announcements. Once again, next meeting, the dates are back here. Where did it this year? September 20th, right here, 9 a.m. That would be the Thursday, Tuesday. And once again, remembering that October, we will shift to the fourth Tuesday, 7 p.m. here.
25th.
Pardon?
October 25th.
October 25th.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Calendar reminder. All right. That was all I had for announcements, unless anyone else has anything. Hearing none. Final public comment? Do we have any? Tom?
Don Dembski again. Kind of continuing on your discussion about the many issues that apparently need to be addressed, roles, responsibilities, the budget, the audit. It's my observation that there's often a lot of talking around issues by this body, and the issues don't seem to ever get brought to conclusion, maybe because they're not even on the agenda. Can I ask, how does an agenda item get put on the agenda?
Typically, prior to the meeting, the chief, typically the board chair, in this instance, with Tom being absent, I stopped in and saw Kim and had a discussion, went over the agenda about any items that needed to be added or what have you, to formulate the agenda. And then, as you've seen here, if something does happen to spring up at the last moment, board members do have the opportunity to amend the agenda, but input is asked of all board members as the agenda is prepared.
So if a citizen were to provide a suggested agenda item to a board member, say 2 weeks ahead of a regularly scheduled board meeting, would it be reasonably expected that that could be forwarded and put on? Because it seems like it's kind of been under the control of the chairman.
Well, I would say so. I mean, Depending on what the item is.
Okay,
I mean,
well-
Please understand, it's, it should be a business item, not a,
Understand? Yeah, an appropriate item.
but yeah, an appropriate item by all means.
So maybe some clarification on the agenda process would also be something to consider. I'd like to recommend that to the board, that something for them to discuss in a work session when they talk about roles, responsibilities, talk about how the agenda process works. I agree, you guys shouldn't be blindsided at the last minute by an agenda item, but I think they need to be sent in ahead, maybe a deadline, a week or two ahead of time, and to a board member to put on the agenda. So moving on, that's all on that. The audit presentation, again, that's an item that I feel like it ought to just be put on the agenda. This auditor works for you. Tell him or her to be there at the next meeting. Don't ask them when they're available. They're working for you. Mark's comments. I very much appreciate my township supervisor's comments. Absolutely support that. Please put those on an agenda. Put those into a work session. Deal with them. Those are real issues that keep biting you. Let's get those cleared up. Remember, if all this mess that some of you acknowledge is swirling around CAFA does not get cleared up, we're going to have one heck of a time getting the millage through a year from now. And I also think that if we're continuing to run in the deficit, maybe we need more money to run this fire department. If that's the case, then that would even be a tougher pill to swallow for the public. So, thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further public comment?
I have some.
Yes, Kim?
I can clarify for Mr. Sharon and the board on the progress on his house that was up to be burned, and that is that it was not empty. He needed time to empty it out. Also needed time to get asbestos inspections done for asbestos abatement.
That was done months ago.
Right, but when I talked to you then after that, you said your house wasn't empty yet.
And I said to the chief, give me a date and it will be empty.
And we
The
said-
chief never got back to me.
When I said, call us when it's empty. And
No,
we would-
I said to the chief, you give me a specific date when you want the house and it will be empty. I never got a phone call, never got.
He did come out.
And I said, give me a date, and he has never given me a date.
But the-
All right.
Okay, and I
You
don't
don't
wanna,
get
don't wanna belittle the point, but
Okay.
he's never given me a date. I finally had to go in and said, the house is empty. Oh, I'll turn the paperwork in then. Well,
Mr. Sheehan, could you see me afterwards and I'll talk with you and we'll get this taken care of, okay?
Kim, don't we have a checklist? Because I went through this,
Yeah,
and I
there
had a
is.
checklist I had to go through.
There is.
Gas has been shut off, electricity has been shut off,
There
asbestos, there's a whole checklist that we go through.
Mhm.
And when all the boxes are checked off, then we should be good.
Because if you schedule it, and you go on a schedule and you put put your resources into planning and training and setting up the training, because a live burn is a huge, huge liability. It doesn't take those lightly.
Right, you need
He's
neighbor
done
approval, you
He's
need-
probably done more live burns than any other fire chief in this county, and it's not something he takes lightly. So I'm just telling you that that's the other side of the story.
Mr. Sharon, I will personally help facilitate this, okay?
Very good. Is there any further public comment? Gary?
No, I haven't been to meetings for a little while, but it's rather interesting. I've been reading some stuff and wondering what was going on. You recall I was one of the original signers of the article incorporation, so I remember when this started. That's what, about 17, 18 years ago. And over the years, I've always pointed out to the Chelsea Area Fire Authority something I'm very proud of being part of that being created. It shows how the greater community can work together and accomplish something. Certainly there's a lot of ruts in the road, a lot of things that have to be done. Somebody mentioned mutual aid. I think that's a fantastic and works very well for the community. I like the idea of going to evening meetings. I agree, I'm not sure many people are going to show up. But I did actually take advantage of the online recording and saw your meeting from a couple weeks ago, just this morning. One of the reasons why I came in to see what was going on. But I will emphasize the website thing. I've hassled Lima a little bit about their website. The website needs some updating. I think it's not update in terms of who's on the board. You're not Linda. You know, it'd be nice to have the agenda posted on the website, so I could have known what we're going to talk about today when we got here. It'd be nice to have the minutes posted and things like that. There's obviously a lot of work to do, some more growing pains, and it takes a while, but keep up the work. And I will continue to say I'm proud of the Chelsea Area Fire Authority. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Any further? Hearing none, public comment is closed. I'm not gonna give up my job because I am the motion to adjourn man.
I'll second you.
All in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, meeting stands adjourned. Thank you all for your attendance.
I was looking through your corporation. This may be the first amendment to